Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Alessandra Perna. I'm the Hub and Data Space Manager here at Gaia-X, and I'm very happy to welcome you all to our public sector data space event. This is the sixth webinar from our data space event series and the third of this year, following the manufacturing data space event and the media data space events that we had earlier in the year. I would like to go quickly through the agenda with you before giving the floor to our first speaker. We will have a welcome and introduction by our CEO, Francesco Bonfiglio. Then we will hear from Mr. Hubert Herdieu, Gaia-X independent board members that will give us some insight on DGA and DEA and the implication for public sector. We will then have an interesting presentation of use cases by Belgium, Finland, Germany, but also we'll learn about the public procurement data space. And then we'll have a panel discussion moderated by Tina Griffith, Data Sport, Strategic Corporate Management, and also lead of Gaia-X public sector ecosystem. After that, we will have some insight from the European Commission by Manuel Mateo Goyer, Deputy Head of Unit in the DG Connect. You can use at any time the chat and the Q&A box for your question, and we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the meeting. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our CEO, Francesco Bonfiglio. Francesco, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alessandra. Good to see you all. Good morning, everybody. I have no slides. I promise I will not bother you too much, but I think this was a very important data space discussion for many reasons. So I tried to squeeze my brain, and I'd like to share some ideas that maybe can be developed during the day in the discussion. And I'm sure that a lot of good minds will bring some good ideas to talk about this very specific world of public administration and public services. So first of all, I wanted to share some thoughts. So everybody knows Gaia-X has been playing quite a significant role in the private sector, in the industrial sector, if you want. That's for sure. But Gaia-X play an equally important role for public and private sector. So I think that we need to understand that in Europe, as well as anywhere else, the public sector restrictions for the cloud adoption are very similar to those of the industrial and private space. There's no difference. What is changed now is that the awareness of the need to gain a sovereign and transparent control of data is very common, is very pervasive all across the countries or all across the European member states. And the governments as well have a great awareness and understanding of the power as well as the threats of digital technologies. So having sovereign and transparent data control has always been a prerequirement for the public sector. And a roadblock to a certain extent was the private sector had to make choices to remain competitive. Sometimes you cannot. You don't have the luxury, let me say, to wait for a new regulation or something to happen. You have to move, otherwise you are out of the market. But now the private and the public sector are looking at Gaia-X as a real single solution for bypassing the forceful boundaries of premises, private, public cloud, and a true open and transparent, I would say, alternative to the existing proprietary and captive market solutions, market offerings. So, but one of the most important effects, in my honest opinion, is I call it the mashup of the data spaces. In other words, we were used to see public sector as a kind of a separate thing from industrial sector or private sector. But nowadays, the public sector is becoming more and more of a combination with private sectors. Think about education, think about transportation or mobility, as we call it today, healthcare, homeland security, and others. They are more and more combined private and public together. And this is happening And this is also supported by the existing investments. First of all, the recovery and resilience funds, but many other programs like the Digital Europe program, the Simple program. Simple is a project to develop a common infrastructure to develop common data spaces. And the most recent Data Space Support Center, or the European Data Innovation Board, or the EDIC. EDIC stands for European Data Infrastructure Consortia. All these initiatives coming this time from the European Commission are very much in line to what I just said. So they are supporting the creation of common data spaces across multiple sectors, and they see the participation of public and private actor in a very proactive and concrete way. In other words, sharing funds, sharing ideas, and sharing solutions across countries, like in the EDIC, which I think is one of the most interesting latest news coming from the European Commission. So what is the role of Gaia-X in this scenario? Gaia-X so far has been the only project in the world trying to translate, the need for sovereignty into a common set of rules and a technology framework to audit and verify them. Not only, we developed specifications and we started implementing the code of this technology framework, but we have already moved into the operationalization of it. So we are creating, as we speak, the possibility for the market, public and private sector, to make use of the Gaia-X compliance services in order to create this trust and this sovereignty that we need from digital platforms. And we started with the beginning of this year, deploying the services, for the moment restricted to 11 lighthouse projects we have internally. But these projects are another example of what I was saying. 11 projects bloomed out in less than 24 months, actually, in multiple domains. Yes, we still need a lighthouse project in the public sector domain. It's one of the missing, actually, lighthouse projects. But this will be unlikely to happen with the same speed of the other industrial domain. Why? Because of three, I think, main reasons. One is the public sector requires handling personal data, which require further attention. So we need further rules, further software components that needs to be developed into the Gaia-X framework in order to handle correctly personal data of the citizens. Two, because public sector is no more an isolated set of services, but more and more integrated with private sector across multiple domains. So think about private public healthcare system, private public transportation system, private public satellites networks, state-controlled utilities, and on and on. You can continue. So there is blurry boundaries between public and private. So it's even more complicated. Last reason, I think, is that creating a federation to build a common public set of data space requires the collaboration across many governments, and I would say all the member states' governments, which is a further complication. So what should we look, and I would like to conclude with these reflections here, what should we look for the future of Gaia-X and the public sector then? I think that in terms of priorities, we should reach the end of this year with tangible Gaia-X deliverables, which is what we are producing. And these tangible deliverables are the deployment for the public use, of course, of the Gaia-X Digital Clearinghouse. This is a network of nodes of execution of the compliance services of Gaia-X and many other services that will enable the creation of common data spaces. So we are operationalizing what Gaia-X is by the end of this year. Then we need to deploy the first catalog of the public catalog of Gaia-X compliance services, because this will create evidence and create a traction that what we are preaching, let me say, is real and can be adopted. Then we need to think about a first Gaia-X digital clearinghouse for the public sector. What I mean is an idea that I shared with some member states, but still we don't have a project. But think about having a common marketplace for public sector digital services. Every country, more or less, I know it because I've seen in Italy, Germany, France. More or less every country has got its own marketplace for public sector cloud services or public sector digital services in general. But the process of qualification is still manual. The rules to qualify the services are still very much human driven. And the rules are very much similar one another country. Now we have ENISA elaborating a common set of rules for cybersecurity, which is going to be EUCS. But still we have Secnum Cloud in France, C5 in Germany, Polo Strategico Nazionale in Italy, and others. All of these rules will have to converge, and I think they will reach the point where they need to find something easy to verify those rules. A single point of trust, a single point of verification, a single point of, let me say, translation between regulation and the evidence of the compliance. And I think Gaia-X can do that through its trust framework. The advantage of building a kind of a clearinghouse for the public sector services would be multiple. On one side, you make the public sector marketplaces unlike any other marketplace in the market. Think about the Amazon or the Microsoft or the Google marketplace. You go on a web, you click, provision, buy, and use it. We don't have that in the public sector today, and this is a limitation. The second problem is that many providers in the market are prevented from offering their services to the public sector because of the processes of qualification are at times cumbersome or sometimes expensive. So we are limiting the power of European companies to provide their intelligence to the market, to the public sector. And I think Gaia-X could help through the implementation of a digital clearinghouse for the public sector in one or more countries. A second point we should do is achieve a strong cohesion across the 21 hubs that we have, and we have 16 in Europe. All countries are involved, and all countries have similar problems. So we don't need to wait for another pandemic or a war to find common solutions like we did. So the Gaia-X hub network is a big think and do tank where we can collect ideas, elaborate them into projects, and submit them into local governments for their implementation support. A third point I see important is a strong involvement of the 16 European government representatives that are sitting in our governmental advisory board to find common solutions, to converge the efforts, to converge the ideas into pan-European common data spaces that solve common problems. And that's what we are doing at Gaia-X, and we will continue to do. And I'm sure Hubert will talk about that as well. The last point, and I will stop my introduction here, is a focus on the European initiatives. So we have new regulations, a lot of them, that something has started now. For example, Data Governance Act is already active. So everybody knows that we need data intermediaries, but not everybody has yet understood how to implement them. And Gaia-X provides an answer, quite a smart one, I have to say. Everybody knows the Data Act is coming, which asks for interoperability, and there's no standards for interoperability. Still, the Data Act asks, well, provides for the usage of open specification as a potential way to implement interoperability. And here Gaia-X comes into play with the smart solution. Next, not too far away, the Artificial Intelligence Act will come. And personally, I believe we need to ensure that Gaia-X provides a way to enable the adoption of these digital technologies, bridging the gap between a regulation which is always more complex and difficult to be verified, both from the providers and the user side, and the need to innovate and improve the quality of services for our citizens and for the common good of our European countries. Let's not stay behind technology. Let's ride the technology and use it to improve our lives. And I think, just to conclude, Gaia-X is trying to give its small contribution to make it happen. So with these premises, I really wish you a good discussion, and I will leave the floor to my esteemed friend Hubert Adieu to continue the discussion. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Francesco. So I have 20 minutes to give you a picture of the new regulation coming. When I have been asked to give that presentation, I did not know that it will be so hot regarding the Data Act, because this afternoon at 5 o'clock, we do have the last trilogue, which will decide whether Data Act will be decided during the Swedish presidency. Next, please. So the regulation for data has been one of the key strategic elements in the work program of the Commission in 2020. And this has translated basically in two legislative orientations: the Data Governance Act, which will be put in place on the 16th of September, and the Data Act, which is still under discussion, but that discussion may close now very soon. Next. So let's go first to the next, please, to the Data Governance Act. It has several chapters. I would like simply to insist on the fact that it is facilitating data sharing across sector and EU countries. In Chapter 3, there are certain obligations which are imposed to organizations to enable data intermediation. Chapter 2 is introducing conditions under which certain category of data held by public sector can be reused. Chapter 4, I'll not speak about that, it's about data altruism. And finally, Chapter 6 is establishing what is called a European Data Innovation Board to facilitate good practice. Next, please. So the objective is to reuse data. The objective is only on non-personal data sharing. It is intended to increase trust in data intermediation services, and it is intended to reinforce data exchange mechanisms. So what are the obligations, and Francesco mentioned that, what are the obligations for data intermediation service? The data intermediation service provider shall not use the data for which it provides data intermediation services other than to put them at the disposal of data user. In other words, let me take one example, which is a case of Airbus with their project, which is to share data between Airbus as an aircraft manufacturer and the customers. In principle, according to the data intermediation services, we cannot have Airbus operating the platform to share data between Airbus as a provider of aircraft and their customer. And the data intermediation services shall be provided through separate legal persons. So I mentioned that the launching of the regulation will be 24 September 2023. Next, please. So at this point of time, I don't want to go too far onto that, but the idea is that the intermediation service provider remain neutral vis-a-vis the data they're enabled to share. They should only act as intermediary in transaction and cannot use data for other purpose. Now, what is important, if they satisfy this regulation, intermediation service provider can use the title data intermediation service provider recognized in the Union. And there will be a common logo visible in all European Union, and that will be, in principle, increasing trust. Next, please. Data Act. So the Data Act is the new regulation, which is still in discussion. It has several objectives, allowing users of connected objects to access collected data and to share this data with third parties. This is very much the case that every time a user is using data objects to generate data, it is not the case that the provider of the equipment can say you cannot access to the data which are generated by the equipment you have bought. It also prevents unfair terms related to data access and use between enterprise. It allows, and this is very important for today, the use by public sector bodies of data held by enterprise in certain situations where there is an exceptional data need. It facilitates switching between cloud and edge services. Francesco mentioned that. Putting in place safeguard against unlawful data transfer without notification by cloud service provider. And finally, providing for the development of interoperability standard for data to be reused between sectors. Let's go very quickly on that because time is short. Next, please. So I have put in italic those elements which are still under discussion, and we will see that at this point of time, there are a lot of resistance by some industrial companies against some of the things I have mentioned in italic. And in red points, they are the ones which are under the attention of the EU trilogue. So basically, the Data Act is involving physical products which collect or generate data, which communicate this data to third parties. So typically, this is a case of electrical vehicle, domestic equipment, and so on, which are, for instance, what is used by farmers if they use their tractor, to whom the data generated by the tractor belong. Only raw data can be made available, excluding all data derived from raw data, which can include trade secrets. So let me take 2 minutes on that, and again, take the example of Airbus. If Air France has bought Airbus aircraft, Airbus is obliged to give to Air France all the data which are collected by the sensor, but is not obliged to give to Air France the derived data, which are, for instance, used to make sure that the balance of the aircraft in terms of regulating their flights are concerned, because this is the trade secret of Airbus. On the basis of a contractual freedom, the party can negotiate the precise term for data usage in their context. This is something which has been said by the trilogue. Regulation intend to preserve incentive to invest in necessary technical tasks. So I would say this is something which is important for the trilogue. But what I believe is probably a very disputed point, the gatekeepers, as defined by the Digital Market Act, shall not be eligible to be third party, and therefore cannot incentivize a user to make data available to one of its services. So you understand that under these circumstances, a company which is producing object which can be using services of a gatekeeper will not be authorized. On this topic, I guess it is raising big discussion. That big discussion is not part of what the trilogue is discussing, but is criticized, especially by small and medium enterprise willing to use the GAFAM for their services. Next, please. So the second point is preventing unfair terms related to data access and use between enterprise. Let's skip that because this is not something very specific. Next one. Okay, probably extremely important, allowing the use by public sector bodies of data held by enterprises, the B2G. In the case of public emergency or in situation where public sector bodies have an exceptional need to use certain data, but such data cannot be obtained, where such data cannot be obtained on the market or by means of existing reporting obligation. So typically, this provision does not apply to micro or small enterprise, and exceptional situations are very well defined. It could be reacting to a public emergency, so they should be provided free of charge. They should prevent public emergencies. They contribute to return to normal after public emergency. And finally, their objective is execute a specific mission of public interest defined by the law. There are many discussion about that, but I would say this is globally accepted, and obviously the devil in the detail, what are the exceptional situation. But I guess this is understood, even some companies are still discussing it. Next, please. Facilitating switching between cloud and edge services. So this is something which we have been discussing in Gaia-X for many years, okay, at least 4 years. Service provider need to take provision warranting the ability for customer to switch to another provider for the same type of service, eliminating all obstacles for customers to terminate the current contract, to enter a new contract, to transfer his data application and other digital asset to another service, to maintain functional equivalent of services. I would say this is not new. It is understood by everyone. It has to do with portability and interoperability, but I guess this is pretty well understood. Next, please. So this is probably one which is very much criticized at this point. Putting in place safeguards against unlawful data transfer without notification by cloud service provider. So this is difficult because it says providers of data processing services shall take all reasonable technical, legal, and organizational measures, including contractual arrangement, in order to prevent international transfer in conflict with union or member state law, okay? Such transfer will only be recognized or enforceable if based upon an international agreement such as mutual assistance, legally assistance treaty. We know typically that between US and Europe, this kind of treaty does not exist at this point of time after the Schrems regulation. And it is probably the last paragraph, which is the most important. In the absence of such an international agreement, where a provider of data processing is the addressee of a decision of court of a third country to transfer non-personal data, such transfer can only take place in limited situations to be defined with the support of the European Data Innovation Board. So it has been mentioned in the DGA that the creation of the European Data Innovation Board will be an element of the regulation. At this point of time, the European Commission is selecting the expert to be part of the European Data Innovation Board. They will be representative of government, but basically this is leaving all the burden of interpreting what means international data transfer to a group of people which will have hard time to make it happen. Next, please. Providing for the development of interoperability standard for data to be reused by sectors. Again, this is something which is very well known, and I don't think it's necessary to go further. Next, please. So this thing will be implemented into an enforcement framework. So each member shall designate one or more competent authority for application and enforcement of data. So for instance, in France, it will be announced soon that ARCEP will be this body, okay? Member state will define penalties in case of violation of the Data Act regulation and take all necessary action for its implementation. And the Commission will develop template. Let me now finish in the last 5 minutes of my presentation by my own judgment. And I have to say, this is not the position of Gaia-X as such, because Gaia-X is made up of a lot of different opinions, including the one coming from the GAFAM, okay? This is my view. The main issues with Data Acts, which drive some association to postpone its implementation, but there are good progress in the trilogue. So in other words, what some associations are saying is that the Data Act is a leap into the unknown, which is not a small comment, okay? And the main reproach they are addressing to the Data Act that only broad data access from overly broad data access from public authorities, so too many cases for exceptional situation. Trade secrets are not properly protected by Data Act, putting at risk European competitiveness. Users prohibited to export their own data and services to any services if their choice, if those are operated by gatekeeper, what I mentioned before, excluding non-EU cloud company from parts of the European market. So Article 27 oblige company to demonstrate they are immune to foreign extraterritorial law. This would be possible through arbitrary enforcement by national regulators. So in other words, they see a situation where, for instance, France can take one option, Germany another option, Spain another option, which make this normally seamless market very difficult to manage. This is what is said by the association. What is said by the trilogue is they need to sort out unfair contractual terms, which are today restricted for contractual arrangement to all companies. It's pretty obvious. And access to non-personal data in case of emergency should be extended to personal data. So this afternoon at 5 o'clock, there is a last meeting of the trilogue, well, hopefully for those pushing for that. And if they agree, it means that under the Swedish presidency, this Data Act will be promulgated. Next, please. If we want to take, I would say, a serious understanding of what is going on, and I'll come back onto that in 2 minutes, the academic view on DGA and DA, what it is. These are following three interlinked aspirations. They want to create a European model for trustworthy data sharing, respecting fundamental rights. They want to create a less concentrated data economy. They want a reduction of the market power of non-European tech firms. But they are making four underlying assumptions. It's not me saying that, by the way. This is this article, which I am quoting on the bottom, which is done by two academic professors. So the above aspiration can only be realized through data intermediary, despite all criticism about middlemen. This is a very important element, meaning that because of what is called the multi-sided market mechanism, without data intermediary, the data market will never take off. And we know the danger of the data intermediary because we have seen that in the B2C market, but we need, however, to use them. Data intermediary are aware of the characteristic of the data they are intermediating. And although data intermediary are likely to replicate some of existing tech giants' criticized features, European regulation will be able to tame them. So this is saying basically that European Commission is taking for granted that they will manage to make it happen, meaning that the implementation of the Data Act will be of the essence. And finally, neutral data intermediaries are economically viable despite prohibition of vertical integration or crop subsidization, which I was mentioning about Airbus and Skywise. If they cannot use the data they are generating while operating the platform, who is paying to operate the platform? Let me conclude by the last slide. So the way forward, and this way forward may start as soon as this afternoon. The next step for Gaia-X is like that. The main criticisms against Data Act have been on the agenda of Gaia-X since day one. And Gaia-X is offering elements of solution with label, automated compliance, clearinghouse, which was mentioned by Francisco, which need to be integrated to make European regulation effective. In other words, there are issues which we know, but we believe we have solutions which can sort out these issues. Before the end of the 2023, DGA will be launched, September 24. DA will likely be finalized during Spanish presidency. I wrote that a month ago, and I believe now it could come as soon as this afternoon. But what is important is that the main risk for European Commission is that industries ignore that typically the label of DG, which is requested on a voluntary basis, and the obligation are not sufficiently legally well defined to give back to court the responsibility of interpreting them in the absence of a European data regulator. What I mean by that is we could see a situation similar to the one we see for personal data, where suddenly Meta is receiving a penalty of 1.2 billion euro because they have interpreted text a different way than the European Commission. So if many of the things which are happening will finish in court, it will be unmanageable. That's why the Gaia-X, through the Gaia-X Institute, has decided to organize, with the support of the European Commission, a conference on September 19, 2023, at University Paris-Dauphine, and the theme is implementing data sharing in Europe, the case of DGA and DA. And for that, and maybe Bert, if you have an opportunity during the panel, but Bert is conducting a survey vis-a-vis all the Lighthouse project of Gaia-X to ask them, what do you believe will be potentially a help or handicap for this new regulation in implementing your Lighthouse project? With that, I have concluded my presentation.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you for your insight on DGA and DA. They're complex topics, so thank you for your clear presentation and run us through the complexity of these documents and regulations. And thank also to Francisco earlier for his presentation. We hope that today's discussion and exchange will facilitate the creation of our public sector lighthouse projects in Gaia-X. But with that, I will get to give the floor to Tina, that is co-organizing today's event with us, with Gaia-X, and will run us through the next presentations on the use cases and also the moderation of the panel discussion. So we started receiving comments and questions, so we'd like to take them later on during the Q&A sessions, but please feel free to keep sending in questions. Will ensure that all of them are well covered. And with that, Tina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alessandra, and good morning to everyone. I'm really happy to see so many people in this call, and I'm even more happy that we found use cases when we were planning this event. We were looking for use cases within the public sector who are not only dealing with public sector data, but who are still thinking of creating public data spaces by using data from public sector bodies. And I'm really happy to introduce you to 4 use cases and 4 guys who will present the use cases. And the first of the 4 will be Simon Claus. His first name is Simon. I was always confused about that. Sorry, Simon. He is project and solution manager at Digital Flanders from Belgium. And he will show us a use case, and he will present us the ideas of the Flanders Smart Data Space. Simon, please start your presentation and go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Tina, for introducing me. So thank you for giving the floor here for presenting the Flanders Smart Data Space. As you said, I'm working at Digital Flanders, which is an agency within the government of Flanders that is responsible for the digital transformation of the public government. At Digital Flanders, we like to use the metaphor where we compare data with other utilities such as water and electricity. Data should be accessible, it should be safe, standardized, should be available with high performance. To make sure there is innovation, there can new applications be developed on top of this data that can drive the society. First of all, to increase the data economy, but also to help realize the policy objectives such as the Green Deal, Blue Deal, major policy frameworks, also the model shift, for example. A few words on the organization of Digital Flanders. So we have 3 strategic focus points that make sure the government of Flanders is powered by data. We want public services to become low touch, digital first, automate and personalize as much as possible. And the 3rd focus point is on relance, make sure that Flanders reaches the top of the European data economy. We create a data utility company that was recently launched for Flanders. It's a public-private partnership branded as Atumi. And we are building also ecosystems with high added value. And there is where this initiative of the Flanders Smart Data Space comes in. General ambition of the government is to become top 5 on the Digital Economy and Society Index. And this is the benchmark study that we use. And that is a very important instrument to see also for the government of Flanders, how Flanders is doing in this digital economy. Final slide on Digital Flanders. This is the budget, and we have 637 full-time equivalents working for the agency. Okay, so why do we do that? Why do we believe in this smart data space? The observation is there is a lot of data, a lot of information, but it's all locked in its different typical silos, as everyone knows. There is a lack of trust between the silos. It can be domain silos, project silos, but also technical silos. There is sometimes vendor lock-in. And because of that, the information and the data is not streaming between as it should be in order to create these new applications and to increase this data economy. Therefore, we are really charmed also by the idea of a data space. You have the general bilateral data exchange between the data provider and the consumer, which works very well when it's a one-to-one data exchange. You agree on a certain format, you exchange the data. Generally, how the situation is now, when you have multiple data providers, they will send their data to a platform which can be consumed, but it is not as scalable as you want it to be if you have a multitude of providers, if you want to exchange data, for example, on a national or really on a domain scale. And also, of course, there is a single point of failure, and you have the access within one central point. Therefore, we believe and we really embrace the idea and the concept of a data space, that you can see the different nodes as a data prosumer, provider or consumer, and that the important thing is to create these agreements, technical, business, legal, and semantic agreements in order to make this data flow between the silos. Because of that, we also implemented our vision or our ID on this data space reference architecture for Flanders. And we initiated a project last year, partly with some of the recovery funds also, which is called the Flanders Smart Data Space, which is using 2 main concepts: that it should be a decentral system and it should be based on interoperability. We implemented through 4 building blocks. So we create a workbench with middleware blocks in order to make this data able to flow between the provider and the consumer. We focus on standards. We have at the agency a program which is called Open Standards for Linked Organizations, or OSLO, where we define these semantic standards and technical standards. We have an ecosystem and we're setting up a governance plan for this data space. The ecosystem is, of course, agencies within the government of Flanders, very important, but we're also very much linked and in collaboration with the local stakeholders, the cities. We work with private organizations that implement some of these solutions, of course, ICT providers and others, but we also have these research institutes that provide input on these standards and technical specifications. Within Flanders, we believe very much in the power of linked data. We use linked data, and we see it also as a possibility to really make the link between these different domains to exchange data and to break up these silos. With that in mind, we developed together with academia the concept of the linked data event streams, which is using concepts of linked data and event streaming as a way to publish this data and consume this data across the different prosumer nodes, if you want. The standard of linked data event streaming is a standard that was being developed. It is also a semantic standard of SEMIC by W3C, also set up as a standard. We are also in a track to make it adopted by ETSI in a collaboration also with NGSI LD. So that's about the technical standard. Based on this standard, we developed a set of different building blocks in order to publish your data along this standard or to consume your data. We also have specific metadata components, authentication and authorization components, and a reference architecture. We're also at the moment developing a connector based also on the Eclipse data space connector to make this more tangible, to have a limited support for policies, to increase the connectivity and the discoverability of the data sets that are within this Flanders Smart Data Space network. At the moment, this connector is focusing on a few building blocks on authentication, discoverability, access control, and getting the data within this linked data standard. The government's plan of the project is based very much also on the idea of the European data space strategy that we have at the regional level, a support center that maintains the ecosystem, but that mainly focuses on this interoperability and standardization. We initiate different technical infrastructure building blocks. I mentioned the middleware solutions that we have. We are also looking at the link with a few digital twin applications in cities. We have a steering group. We have a business advisory, a business and a technical advisory board. And we are focusing at the moment, let's say, on 3 domains mainly. That's mobility, water, and public administration. But we're also looking at energy, agriculture, and health domain. But we started, when the project started, mainly by looking at the mobility and the water domain as a use case. So this is to conclude. You see here the core concepts as a resume of the Flanders Smart Data Space. Data should be fair, set up a governance framework, a broad ecosystem with public but also private stakeholders. Important is with this linked data event stream standard, the data is real-time, up-to-date, so it can be used for more static data sets, but also for real-time or IoT data sets. Data is linked, and it is a decentralized data sharing solution, which is also key. Then to finalize my presentation, I can say a few words on this water data space, what is happening there. So basically, we are setting up a group of a governance of this water data space within Flanders. It goes within the umbrella of the Coordination Commission Water Policy. That's an already existing body where you have the main stakeholders that are responsible in parts of the water system within Flanders. So you have the organizations that are responsible for the water utilities that provide the water, also that do the monitoring of the water quality, but also the organizations that are in charge of the sewage system, for example, for Flanders. You also have the provinces and the cities. So with them, we are coming together to create this charter based on these standards that we want to use within their domain. At the same time, we are also onboarding some big data sets. There is the Internet of Water Sensor Network. That's an IoT real-time sensor network that measures water quality in the water, but we're also onboarding, for example, the digital water meter data that is now being installed in all the households within Flanders. So the general idea is we have here two onboardings that are being adopting these standards, but we also will increase this also with other stakeholders to create this network of this water data. Finally, and that's the ambition, that's what we are preparing now, to use it for a big societal challenge, that is the drought problems in Flanders. So if there are longer periods of drought, there are a set of decisions that needs to be taken. Locks needs to close, for example. There are areas where there is no navigation anymore possible. There are specific water cannot be used for other specific purposes, and at the end there is from the government a kind of recommendation to the persons, to the people, to the households, that they should not use water for these or these cases. So this specific framework, this decision support tool, let's say, is being developed, but it's at the moment not very data driven. So we plan to use this concept of this data space to make this drought framework more data driven in the future. We are now preparing that. Of course, it's something for the longer term if we really want to start, if we really want to implement this. So this is, let's call it the big use case in the water domain we are working on right now, based on the concepts and the ideas of this Flanders Smart Data Space. My final slide. So you have a portal with information. Unfortunately, it's only in Dutch, but the technical documentation of these building blocks based on linked data is available in English. And if you need some additional information, you can contact me or find it on the internet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simon. I think this is a really interesting and advanced concept, very reasonable in the construction in itself. And I wish you good luck that all those public sector institutions who provide data and uses data, that there will be it will be more and more data that can be used. Thank you, Simon, and let me welcome Nicholas Schlifke, who is my colleague from Dataport. He is Geosolution Manager at Dataport here in Germany, and he is talking about the use case which is called data sharing within public administration by replicating open source data platforms. Nicholas, the floor is yours.
Okay, yes, thanks, Tina. So welcome everybody. So my name is Nico Schlifke at Dataport. As Tina said, I work as a Geosolution Manager. So I mainly consult on setting up geodetic data platforms. And so that's what I want to speak about today as well, and see how we can also spread the solutions from maybe one place into other public administrations as well. So the use cases I have are slightly more detailed than my predecessor, and so start off with things, you know, like I guess most of you here in this group know of, you know, the advantages of data sharing. So we come out of public administration, of course, the data sharing within public administration just creates efficient, optimized processes. So it just speeds up everything and also reduces the overall costs for administration and other things as well. At the same time, also as my predecessor said, you know, if you have a good data sharing system, you enable some decision makers to make very fast but also easy fact-based decisions. At the same time, if we take the data from inside public administration to the outside, the companies can use the data and maybe optimize their product as well, but also create new business cases, for example, by combining data that was previously enclosed within one of the silos within public administration. And what I like about that is just it gives the data which is within public administration a bit more value, instead of it just being more or less hidden within the public administration sides of itself. And finally, the public can also have access to all this data. You can maximize the use of any public offers that public administration can do or give, but it can also maybe enable the public to participate in things like planning when they know what's happening around them. And that in general can just create the trust in public administration when they also know basically on what public administration also bases their decisions. And so the use cases that I brought are very specific use cases, and mostly from the city of Hamburg, because that's one of the pioneering cities for these geodetic data platforms. And I say geodata, and that means that's any data that you can basically geo-reference. It means any data you can put on a map like this. And with some estimates in Germany, it's about 80% of all data within German public administration can somehow be geo-referenced, and that way be geodata. And so within Hamburg, this is a few small examples how the data platform, data sharing is used. So this is, for example, the number or all the accidents that happened in 1 year within the city of Hamburg. And all this data is clustered and standardized. So you can see, by what means of transport was the person who had the accident, what means of transport was he using, was he a pedestrian, a cyclist, or a car, and what happened in the accident. So this is like one of these data that sets are within the city of Hamburg, but just used within Hamburg because of course it's not a public data set itself. Other data sets which are more interesting for the public, especially in Germany after the floods about 2 years ago, is one of these, like the groundwater flow after strong rainfall. So it means here the public administration took large data sets from the data sharing platform and analyzed them to see where will water gather after strong rainfall. So they look at different inclinations of the ground, what subsurface there was, and so on. And so now you can basically see, if you're an owner of a house, it's a map where you see the houses, and if the blue areas are close to your house, it means that's where your water will gather when there's a strong rainfall. And so you might want to take some precautions that your cellar doesn't get flooded, or maybe you just want to increase the quality of your house. And in a similar way, the next case is the location of solar panels. So here again, the city administration took data from the public data spaces and combined them in a way that they calculated the location for solar panels. So they looked at the inclination of roofs, which direction are they showing, how high are the trees in the way. And so basically now they've produced a new public data set showing which houses might be useful to use as a base for solar panels, and maybe also homeowners can invest in solar panels as well. So these are all cases where data from inside the data space within the city's administration was used. The last example is a small project called the Urban Analyst. So this is a small company in Germany that specializes on writing different kind of algorithms. And so what it does, it took data again from a public data platform and analyze it in a way that this algorithm basically computes this distance from any point of a house to any area, like a recreational area or school, and the time that you need to get there by any means of transport. And that combined with like a social index basically shows which areas are socially disadvantaged, but also have high distances to schools or recreational areas where city authorities might want to basically invest on new lines or similar things. So this is just the last example where basically data from the public was taken and by the private sector and then created basically new insights by combining the data that was previously not combined. So these are three very specific use cases for the geodata platform. And so we need that Dataport. So Dataport itself is a public IT provider. So it's got its own IT infrastructure, but it's also got services and other things. And so we, of course, ask ourselves, how can we provide low cost, but also safe solutions, not only for one public administration, but for many together? And where do we have our current limits? So in Hamburg, the whole heart of this very successful data sharing is the so-called urban data platform. So this is the part in the center where the urban data platform basically takes all the data from different systems. It can be some kind of sensors, but it can also be signals, but also very static data. It all goes into the urban data platform where the data is all standardized and then gives some different kinds of open APIs to the outside world where it can be used either in the European data portal in apps, but also in other portals where you can just visualize the data. And here is one of the other things. So the visualization of the data is the second big part of this solution in the city of Hamburg, which is called the Master Portal. So it's basically another software that visualizes all data that's in the data platform. And Hamburg chose to go on an open source approach. So everything which is inside this data platform with the standardization of the data, as well as all the visualization to the public, is all open source. So this is where we from Dataport then took it on to see how can we spread this among German administration. So starting off with the Mars portal, it's basically one piece of open source software. So where we as Dataport are interested in pushing for open source, but also checking that open source will be stable for a long time, and so you don't need to be worried about it being, unsafe at some point. And for that, we basically made or created a so-called implementation partnership with about 40 public institutions from Germany and Austria, and they will basically pay money into one pot from which then all the development of this open source software is then made. And so together with the open source community, on the one hand, on the software side, we've made basically the independent, sustainable, and stable software, so we can rely on this open software component. The other side is a bit more complex because the urban data platform is very dependent on the IT infrastructure. And one of our main jobs at Dataport is providing these very secure IT infrastructures and services. So the aim here is, so this portal where the platform where you basically take and transfer all the data is deployed in our data centers, because then we can offer rapid deployment of the infrastructure and all the different components in it, but also we can do this as often as we can because we just purely use open source components. And we're aware that some smaller cities and areas might need a different kind of platform, so we modularly structure this data platform as well, and you can very customize it. But finally, the big goal of Dataport is also to get these kind of platforms into wider public administration. And so maybe you want these platforms outside of our data center, so we also provide services for deployment in external data centers. And by this structure, by basically making implementation partnerships to stabilize the software on the one side, got good software, but also having the data platform in our IT infrastructure makes it a very safe and local solution to provide the data. And when we have these data platforms, we can basically enable different small public administrations to, first of all, share their data within the institution. So say if one local authority has one of these data platforms, they can share any data within their institutions, doesn't matter if it's open data or maybe data that needs worth protecting. And through replication, we can basically transfer that to another different local authority and build up the same thing there. So that all works very fine, easily. Same as when we get this data out of the platforms into one central open data platform, that's fine, where public and companies can also get their data from. So with the solution we have at the moment, these data flows, that is the geodata, they all work fine. Where there's problems at the moment is when we have some kind of data that's worth protecting. For example, when you want to dig some holes somewhere in the street and you don't know if there's some kind of critical infrastructure beneath that, it's very difficult to share this data across some kind of IT boundaries from the public administration to companies. This is where we're at the moment doing a proof of concept, if we can somehow have some kind of Gaia-X space in between to solve the solution. And yeah, I just want to leave you with the take-home messages. So open data systems are great, I find mine personally, but also that Dataport as a public IT service provider can create cost-effective and simple data platforms, especially with open source solutions, which is good for many different use cases. But at the moment, this one case I mentioned just now, when transferring data to companies, which is somehow worth protecting, that's where it gets to the limits at the moment. So that was my short, brief introduction of the things we're doing here at Dataport with Hamburg together. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thanks for presenting us this use case from the city of Hamburg. We are moving to Finland now. I'm happy to introduce to you Antti Joki-Poikola. He is lead data architecture specialist at Sitra in Finland, and he will talk to us about data spaces as an engine for the next level of public digital services. Yogi, would you like to share your screen?
Yes, hope that you can see that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so my name is Antti Joki-Poikola. I work at Sitra, which is Finnish Innovation Fund, and I'm lead architect there, and Sitra hosts also the Gaia-X hub in Finland. And yeah, so just a little bit of background why I'm here. I'm not representing government as the other people here on stage, but Sitra is investing its private fund, but it's under the Finnish parliament. So we have certain financial independence to do anything that is good for the future of Finland, which of course data sharing belongs to. And for that reason, we are also coordinating the national Gaia-X hub in Finland to boost the Finnish companies and other organizations to take advantage of the data space development. And Sitra is also a partner in the Space Support Center, the SSC project, which some of you might know, EU-funded project that helps data spaces to flourish. My pitch today goes in 3 parts. So I will explain the Finnish context of developing public services around life events. So this is kind of the paradigm change from organization-centric view of developing public services to the human-centric view, where these services are coming from different directions, but they all serve the same people or also same companies. Companies can be kind of citizens in that sense. And then I go to the data spaces, how data spaces can speed up the development of these so-called life event services. And then I just have final notes of a couple of thoughts regarding public sector data spaces. So what about the life events? So there has been quite long development in Finland. I saw in the earlier presentation that Finland tends to stick into the top 3 or 5 in the public sector digitalization metrics, and that's good, but there is still lot to be done. And one key thing that has been going on for several years now is turning the mindset of public service provision from this fragmented organizational centric view to the more customer centric or human centric view. And there the key concept is life events. So people's lives are composed of all sorts of events, starting from the birth and going to the daycare, starting school, having family, moving houses, etc. And each one of those events, typically, they are a bundle of also engagements with different public services. And they never come from one service organization. They come from many at the same time. So the current practice is sort of built on the efficient administration in which power and responsibility and resources are distributed among different organizations, public entities, and they do their best to kind of cater one part of the buffet table. But then the future would be these so-called people-oriented proactive society in which organizations, public organizations, work together to help people and deal with their life events easily and conveniently at all stages. So there, the human is in the center, and the different organizations that provide services are coming around them. And just to illustrate this a little bit more, here is a picture. This is coming from university research related to life event of somebody moving from abroad to Finland. So this migrant Agnes is moving to Finland, getting documents from their home country, certificates from university, and then they are researching where to move, where to get housing in Finland, how to register, how to get tax cards and workplace and student union fees. This immigrant is coming to study to Finland and so forth. So there are like plenty different activities that this one person needs to do, relates to one life event, she moving to Finland to study. And on the other side here on the purple color, there are the different different administrations or authorities that try to help this person. So this is the big picture, and this is also written in the Digital Compass, the Finnish digitalization strategy for 2030, that the objective is to define and digitalize approximately 40 of the most significant and impactful life events service packages by 2030. So service package here means that, for example, if the life event is moving to Finland, then there is a package of services that this person needs, and they are all coming from different public service providers. So what this has to do with data spaces? So we are, Sitra is hosting several thematic groups for different areas, and we are now incubating. So this is in early stage. We are incubating a group for public sector data space. And in that group, we have taken this concept of life events and started to see side by side with the data spaces. So if you look at the big picture of these kind of life event service packages, it's obvious that cross-organizational data sharing is a must in order to make these kind of services seamless for people. And then other notion is that, okay, Finland is going to create 40 or identify 40 of these life event-based service packages and implement those by 2030. So there are same public organizations that will be involved in many different life events. life services. So for example, tax authorities, social security institutions, etc. They are all involved in many of these life event services. And then furthermore, the same data sources are needed in many life event services as well. So this is kind of, it starts to build the picture of how to get this synergetic idea to use data spaces to speed up these public services in digital world. So I picked this here in the top. It's from the Data Spaces Support Center glossary. It says that a data space use case is a potential usage scenario for data space that is envisaged to solve business challenges or to create value as a result for one or more data space members. So in this incubation group for public sector data space, we took this idea that perhaps we could consider these live event packages that Finland is anyways going to develop as use cases for public sector data space. And something that started to resonate a lot in that group was this perception of data as product. So data as product means that it's really mindset change in the organizations so that they start producing data with reuse in mind. And then when that's done, widely used product thinking can be applied to data, and the data product is the unit of data reuse. So this leads to this synergy that data space could be the engine for developing these live event-based services. So maybe there is the first live event where there is data product 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are all coming from different organizations, and it's kind of heavy lifting to build that. But then the next live event should be already easier, since some of the public organizations and also private, so it shouldn't be only public organizations, but some of the organizations that are providing data that is necessary for the first live event are already onboarded in the data space, and therefore it's much easier to develop the next live event, and then it goes on, and the third event should be even more easier because there is even less new organization to be onboarded and less new data sets to be turned into data products. So here the idea is the data product is the conceptualization that it's a unit of data that is needed to build these live event-based services. So that was the concept, and it's in early phases. I'm here in this webinar now to get also connections. So if you got interested at any level, don't hesitate to contact me, and we try to be agile and develop this concept further. So there is tax administration and social security institutions and some ministries involved at the moment, and we are extending the circle as we speak. We just had a new government with a new government agenda, so we are tying this development to that. So just finally, a couple of thoughts regarding the public sector data spaces. So it's important to know that public sector data sharing and interoperability has a long history that is much longer than anybody heard of data spaces. For example, X-Road is something that Finland and Estonia has been doing for years to do public sector data sharing. So it's an infrastructure that exists already. Then other important thing is to understand that most data spaces which are not specifically public sector data spaces will have public sector involvement. Like for example, skills data space, there are the public registries involved, etc. And on the other hand, maybe there is no public sector data space that is only public because that needs to be connected to private. So that's why we are thinking this public sector data space as the data space to speed up public sector digital services. Anyways, that's good to keep in mind. And then third point is that personal data is in the core of many public services. Of course, not all, but really many or most. And there, these human-centric ideas of my data and so forth are very useful conceptualizations. And then finally, regulatory requirements can be used to bootstrap a data space. In Finland, we are now starting also a maritime data space, and there is a global mandatory maritime single window regulation coming in beginning of next year, where all ports all over the world need to collect and report the data from the arriving vessels in similar way. So when there is some sort of data related regulation, that's always an opportunity to boost up data spaces. So that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yogi, for sharing your ideas and insights of the concept of public sector data spaces. I think this is a real interesting concept, and I would be happy if others could join and discuss these ideas. I got the hint, but you're right, we are running out of time, so we will move quickly to Spain and ask Aitor to talk about his project. Aitor is semantic web architect and data scientist at NTT Data in Spain, and he is telling us the story of the public procurement data space. And please, please, please keep the 10 minutes in mind.
Yeah, for sure, Tina. I will hope I spend a little bit less. Well, for my presentation, I'm Aitor Cochero. I'm a semantic expert in NTT Data. Here in the call, there are also a colleague of mine that we are in the group of public sector, and in that unit where we are focusing on delivering product procurement, the data space and services for the public administration. So in the presentation today, I will perform a little introductions and thoughts about the public procurement data space. So for the main objective of this project is just to create an integrated space, just to share data, to enable data sharing, data curation, and also uplifting this data sharing towards knowledge and just using emerging technologies to facilitate to connect the different stakeholders like public buyers, public policymakers, and national level public administration, company researchers, etc. So the main outcomes of the main thoughts that we have in mind with the vision of the public procurement data space is just to having a better value for money, just to supporting the planning of tenders, the strategic sourcing, etc. Just to improving the access to the tenders, just to supporting SMEs, industries, just for a fair competition. Just another one is just to improve the targeting and performance of public spending, just to showing the different money that the public sector is investing, just to connecting public and private sector on these investments, just to build a newer service to the public administration. And this is aligned with the first presentation of the president of Gaia-X, that there is the vision just to having this more clear, more open. Another is the easy reporting of the different greens, social procurements, and tracking of the EU funds. And also just with the view of making fair the use of the money, just to fighting with the corruption, the fraud, and just to elaborate further in avoiding or the waste of public money. So at the end, all of these benefits are converging until also supporting, transforming public administration and moving on the new wave of digitalization, enabling new public services, moving the public administrations, as Enric told in the chat, the real-time administration, just delivering, moving the different data, connecting the different data to being benefit for the society, for the industry, and also reducing, providing efficient procedures for the public administration. So, what is all about? What is the overview of the public procurement data space? Well, we are just working on connecting the different providers and consumers of data, and for that, under a single access point, we are considering a federated approach just to, with different connectors, just to establish the data sharing, the exchange of data, and also within the different public administrations. And we are working on this specific part that is more the important thing, that's the PPDS connector, that is the ones just to enable the whole data cycle, just to from the collecting the raw data till publishing that data with the specific data to facilitate the understanding for all the machines and all the procedures in the public administration. So as a high-level architecture, we have in the ones that we have the data layer in which all the different data are in different silos, and we need to connect it. In these databases, there are data regarding urban databases, procurement data, and national information portals that we need to integrate it. And for that, we envision the elaboration of specific metadata, catalogs, ontologies, just to format, harmonize this data, and also in the same way to curate this data and to provide quality data just to be exposed, for the data portals of the data space, and also for enabling analytics over this data, performing data discovery, querying, and also enabling decisions based on KPIs. And finally, we have the user interface, just to connect, to navigate, to explore, and to provide insights about the integration of that data. And what are we, or what is the stage of the elaboration of this public data space? Well, for now we are in the first phases, that are the collection of data, identification of data, identification of requirements, and then to facing during this second part of the year the elaboration of initial MVP, just to be incrementally increase it with functionalities, with all the data and with all these public services, just to delivering in the future the public data, public procurement data space. So the most important part, and just to finalize the presentation, the presentation, is what are the thoughts or main challenges during the elaboration that we have into the right now or in the future. The first of all is we need, or the active involvement of the public. We have the public involvement of the public administration, but also in the future we need to integrate companies, private sector, and over this loop, just to provide services, to moving the wheel for the elaboration of a public sector services market, yes, in which private sector could deliver also services, trying to reduce, as also said in the first presentation, conversion processes, just to delivering public services. Another important part is data interoperability and data quality to facilitate exploration of data and analytics services, the construction of catalogs, vocabularies, metadata catalogs, just to convey, to establish the rules, to harmonize the data, and to having also publicly available for further reuse for the elaboration of that digital tools. Also, we need to have the vision to promote tools, methodologies for ensuring the governance enforcement. We need to, as said in the first two presentations, we need to ensure the link between the regulation, but also the implementation, just to make robust, make confident, made strong the construction of different data spaces, not only in the public sector. And for that, we need to have the vision of establishing certification mechanisms of the assets, and also trusted application catalogs, just to be reused, to be adopted, and to enable the data sharing between trust data sharing between that services. And finally, we need to contribute, and we have the mission to contribute to the data space functional blocks in agnostic view, just to integrate and scalable solutions, just to be transferred between the different sectors, and reducing not only the intra-sectorial silos, but also just to facilitating to moving through removing the silos between the different sector, and more important, the connected different sectors. That is all for me. I think that's been quite short. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tina, for inviting us. And well, we are happy to answer questions, and also to put in contact with our teams here in the public sector, just to answer questions and other things.
Thank you, Aitor, for sharing your use case and your ideas. I'm really happy that you took the time. Really, really great. Thank you very much. And hints to the audience, please feel free to get to the F&A session and ask your questions there. We will answer them, or the people who are talking here will be happy to give answers to you. I would now like to start our panel discussion with representatives from the EU government about needs and challenges for establishing public sector data spaces. But first of all, I'm happy to introduce to you our panelists today. You may have mentioned that we have a change in our agenda insofar as France and Austria couldn't make it today, unfortunately. So it's up to 3 people here, with me 4, and I'm happy to introduce Christina Schmidt-Holtmann. She is from the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. She's head of division and responsible for data availability, digital sovereignty, and our National Innovation Agency. I'm also happy and pleased to introduce to you Bert Verdonk, who is from Luxembourg. He is the CEO of the National Data Service in Luxembourg. Welcome, Bert. And last but not least, we have Marius. Marius Posa is the Undersecretary of State for the Romanian Ministry of Research, Innovation and Digitalization. I'm quite not sure if he's already with us. I see his name, but I can't see any pictures. Ah, there you are. Hi, Marius, glad to see you. Before we start with some questions I have prepared and talked to with the guys here in this call, I would like to give a short, very brief introduction into the idea of data spaces and what's going on within public administrations all over Europe regarding digitalization issues. I think digitalization is developing in steps. We have one first step that might be called digitalization of processes, which is advancing. It is moving from paper to electronic services. Electronic service deliveries is very common today. Public administrations are moving from PDFs to structured data, and this is really very common. The second step would be using data for data analysis. It's quite a follow-up of the development of processes. It's not yet as widespread as the first step, but data analysis within administrations is used to increase its own efficacy. It's used for evidence-based government action and decisions. There are dashboards developing that are used to summarize trends and statistics and also allow predictive predictions for future developments. But mostly, however, the data remain in silos or within one administration, and it's only rarely made available to third parties, which comes to the third step, I think. It's the construction of data spaces, and that's what we are talking about at Gaia-X at this stage. Data spaces is where data come from different providers and from different sources, and which could be combined. Data providers could be public or private institutions, and the data itself can come from a variety of sources. It might come from registers, it might even come from sensors, and it can be offered for third parties, I think. Now, my perception is that steps 2 and 3 are not yet widespread. There are a number of obstacles, I think, for data utilization that need to be overcome. And I had some findings from discussions here in Germany within the public sector domain from Gaia-X, and I shared that with the other hubs of Gaia-X in Europe, and I read a research done by Capgemini Research Institute last year. They did a worldwide survey about data sharing in the public sector, and their results are very consistent with my findings, and I would like to share these with you. The main obstacles for data sharing or creating data ecosystems are culture, trust, and technology. And what's about cultural challenges? Those include lack of collaboration between government agencies and culture of working in silos, a lack of digital culture to support data sharing and collaboration, a lack of data literacy. And one point I didn't find in the research, but I would add personally, is legal uncertainties of handling data, especially when it comes to the use of personal data. Now, trust-related challenges include citizens' resistance to share data, a lack of trust in quality of data, and some skepticism of data handling of ecosystem partners. The last one, the technology-related challenges, is a lack of existing data infrastructure, a lack of standardization in data or data sharing norms, and sometimes it's, of course, a lack of money which is required for establishing the technical infrastructures and the maintenance. I personally think that the technological requirements are of little importance, whereas organizational and cultural constraints weigh much more heavily. But I think we can talk about this with our panelists today. And with this being said, I would like to hear from you about your experiences, your advice, and your ideas for creating data spaces within the public sector in Europe. I think we can take the next 30 minutes to hear about your experiences. And I would start with a question to all three of you. How do you raise awareness for Gaia-X and for establishing data spaces? Christina, would you like to start? I can't hear you. I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Sorry, there was a double muting. Now you can hear me, hopefully.
Okay, now.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So thanks a lot for the question and for inviting me, Tina. Up to now was a really interesting presentation, and actually that's already one of the answers to your question, how we could raise awareness for Gaia-X. It's with those video conferences and public talking about Gaia and the use cases, because use cases are elementary for everyone, let it be the public sector or even businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, to, well, spread the word and the idea for Gaia-X and showing really the practical case. Then you can, of course, think about what's the perfect way to do so to spread the word about Gaia-X. And as Francesco has already mentioned, the whole Gaia-X universe does also exist of a lot of hubs that spread the word around Europe, but also on a global scale. And I can talk at least for Germany. So we do have the Gaia-X hub in Germany that has now more than 1,400 members in different sectors. And well, you know quite well because you're heading the Gaia-X hub public sector working domain in Germany. That we are really going into deep discussion and expert exchanges in the different domains. And what's really interesting for me, and looking in the discussion that in the chat, you can already see it, that there's also a lot of cross intersectoral exchange between the different domains and sectors, because the questions that are rising up when it comes to sovereign data exchange are more or less the same in all the different sectors. And I think they can learn a lot of each other or from each other. And that's so important why we do have the exchange on a national level, but then also having a system on a European level where we can work on really European data spaces. And speaking as someone, as a representative for the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs, It's also a question of maybe supporting and funding some projects. So here we in Germany, we are funding quite a lot of projects and use cases within the Gaia-X universe. There are some in the public sector, because there is a lot of talk at the moment, at least in Germany, but I know that's also on the European level and in other member states, how we can have sovereign data exchange and, not the Microsoft lock-in effect when it comes to the offers we are using. So different funding projects in the finance sector. Eurodot was already mentioned in the chat, for example, where we, for example, try to build up the first data sharing service according to the Data Governance Act. So that are all the ideas and tools governments can use to support the whole ecosystem of Gaia-X.
Yeah, really interesting. You were already talking about the support and funding ideas. I think that's a very good leverage to make sure that more and more public sector institutions are looking at Gaia-X and are wondering what they are doing there and what the developments are, if they can use them. Bert, how about Luxembourg?
Yeah, thank you, Tina. I'm heading up the chance now for having a very new institution, the Luxembourg Data Center. And so what we have come to understand is that this public sector needs this enabling infrastructures to support all the departments, all the administrations into this data sharing challenge. And we, of course, will become a party or a supporter of the competent body as described in the Data Governance Act. So all of the member states are in this process of implementing this act and bringing it to practice. And that opens up quite some opportunities. And this is not an activity strictly within the public sector only. That's maybe where our initial priority is, data exchange between different public bodies, but also in opening that data for the private sector and getting to a beneficial interaction between public and private sectors. It is also an activity that is not happening within a country only, but really focused on enabling cross-border exchange. And that is something we have not seen a lot yet, where the data sharing goes really across a multitude of different entities, a multitude of parties, and also with parties in a cross-border situation. So those are things which are many parties are developing use cases for. But if you look really where we stand, that still a lot of progress needs to happen. Of course, also the European Commission has stimulated a lot in the past the open data initiative. So we see a bit more progress on those areas where the data can be made entirely open and shareable to the public. But there is many data, and we saw some examples today where the data cannot be really opened entirely and needs to be selectively opened with some restrictions. And that's where things become a bit more complicated. And that's where new frameworks from a governance perspective, as well as from technology, are still required to advance to give us efficient ways of sharing restricted data.
Yeah, very true. We have a big discussion about this in Germany. I know that's really a crucial point. I would like to hear from Romania, Marius. How is the situation in Romania? What are you thinking about it? How do you raise awareness for Gaia-X, and how is the public sector reacting to Gaia-X?
Hi, hello to everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If we talk about Gaia-X and awareness from Gaia-X in the Romanian public sector, I would say it was, let's say, a joint venture between us. And if we talk about strategy, you can see we are very, very, very involved in the government cloud. in the interoperability platforms and all the connectivities for the increase the trusting of the general population in the government sector. That means we try to be on time with everything. And why not telling Gaia-X, it was a great partner to change politics and solution between us. Also, we give some ideas to the members of Gaia-X, and we took a lot of ideas from them. And together we have some, let's say, good practices in the public sector and increasing the trust of the people in the public sector. Actually, it's not simple, this digital transformation in all sector. It's very hard because first of all, we have the age problem, okay? Because when we go in the street, we don't have only young people, okay? We have also the people with, I don't know, 60, 70 years, who are, let's say, it's not about the trust, it's about the knowledge to apply all these digital skills. And I think we stay very well. And also, if we talk about relation with Gaia-X, we have seen if our politics are convergent, we can manage a very good package of laws and politics for the public sector.
Yeah, quite interesting. Could you tell us, Marius, a bit about the public sector activities in your country, maybe the use cases you are now dealing with and the main challenges for data sharing in the public sector in Romania?
Yes, you know, when we talk about interoperability platform, that means to put it all the information together. You'll see if we talk about, let's say, the small county areas who are, let's say, not they have created already small ecosystems, and it's very hard to implement and to take it all together. So we need time, and we need to do it step by step, because if this digital transformation will be over the night, okay, that means we can crack the system and stop everything. And the trust of the local authorities, it's increasing day by day, because they started and they have the vision. This is an opportunity for the tomorrow life, because otherwise we are back in time. If we go back in time, and you will see, if you need a document, a paper, anything from the public sector, you need to travel, to spend time, to spend money. Now, if we have all this together, they was convinced it's very easy to have just to one click distance all this information. And I believe, yes, we are in a very good way, and we are in the, let's say, we are starting to travel to the highway with slow speed now, but we'll increase the speed, and to the end we'll reach the destination in time.
Well, thank you for this insight. But how about Luxembourg? What are the public sector activities in Luxembourg?
Well, like many countries, a lot is already going on in the digital transformation. But in most cases, these things are happening department by department. So like in the labor department, social security, health sector, each of these are on the digitization track, which is good. Also, the open data is given a lot of attention. So there's an open data platform. We have GeoPortai, which is sharing a lot of information already, geographical related information. So all these things are in good progress. Where we and my institution needs to assist more is in the secondary use of data and the sharing across entities, especially, like I said before, of data that is not necessarily open for like open data for all users, and where we need to moderate the access to such data. And you see applications of that, for example, in the education sector, like to analyze the effectiveness of student loans and support money that the government gives to students. How do we evaluate that money lands well? So that needs focused attention and sharing of data between the education departments as well as the social security department. So it's a combined question of sensitive data, personal data, to be combined across departments. Other examples are in the health sector and social domain, the effectiveness of certain treatments combined with social economic indicators of certain patient target groups. So this is again a complicated question of sensitive data to be combined between departments. So those are some examples where we're trying to add the expertise and where we need infrastructure that can be trusted so that we can follow through, that really if we give permission for a specific use, that the users of that data stick to that use and that is controllable. And that needs much more tooling and much more advanced governance frameworks in order to do those.
Did you, just a question for, on this, did you already develop such governance frameworks?
To a certain extent, we're not fully there yet. So we have the starting points and we have several, again, concrete use cases along which we will work these out, because a governance structure building on it out in theory will not be good enough. You need to develop them with real practitioners and real use cases in mind. And that is what we have started to do in some of the example areas which I've sketched. And more recently, one will also be in the energy sector. We have digital meters installed in all of the houses now of people in Luxembourg. And we're looking into, okay, what are the allowable and smart uses of that energy data, which is now available on an individual level. And I can tell you that's not an easy discussion from a personal GDPR use perspective, but it's a very interesting use case to work on these allowable use of individual energy data.
Yeah, I really can imagine that, because we have the same discussion in Germany about personal data and the restrictions or the limited use.
And this is exactly what we want to stimulate through this public sector data space across Europe, to really learn from each other's practices and how can we come to an effective implementation of whatever are the political or the societal principles. So these might still differ, but the way we implement this guidance, there's a lot to learn from each other and a lot of synergy in how we can implement these.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very cool idea. Christina, I know very well how the public sector is working in Germany, but I would like to ask you as well. The main challenges for data sharing in the public sector, and maybe you can add a personal estimation about where Germany stands compared to the other European hubs in this area. Maybe you have an idea or can share some thoughts about it.
Yeah, so first of all, I would completely underline what Bert said, and I think the discussion and the ideas are going quite in the same direction, and that really underlines the need for European exchange. I think Germany, and Tina, you know quite well, as you said, has like some added hurdles to tackle, and as the audience may know, so we are organized as a federal state. That means that we are on the federal level, where we do have the public sector or some public sector services, but then we do have like 16 lenders, so counties that are organized in their public sectors differently, and they have also the right, and they really like their rights
they use it.
And they use it, yeah, to offer and to build different services. So the whole consolidation of IT services, like talking about the technical level, but also the regulation on the federal and then on the local level, to harmonize that all. It's like a European Union in minimum, or in a small world. You can maybe compare it like this. That's something, of course, that goes, well, not really in line with the idea of centralizing services, having one offer and the one-stop shop idea where every citizen, and it doesn't matter if he's born or living in Berlin, in Munich or Frankfurt, can use the same services. So we do already have a lot of problems if we move from one county to the other, and then to get your ID card with the new address that there until now there's not the only way to get it updated. And therefore I would completely support what you said, Tina. That's not only a technical problem, maybe the digitization of the public sector, but a lot of question of regulation, and then of finding a smart way of sharing the checks and balances between the different regulators. And so the whole government on federal and on the Länder level is working quite hard in Germany on the implementation of the Online Access Act, to have the full digitization of all the public services. And then, of course, in concept like Gaia-X, where we do have decentralized services, helps us a lot to rebuild these, what I tried to explain, the diverse landscape in Germany, also to rebuild it on a decentralized infrastructure. And therefore, especially for Germany, Gaia-X is really helpful. Well, you asked me for where does Germany stand in the context of other in the context of other European member states. I think I gave the answer. So we are not at least the front runners, unfortunately. I could also tell as a citizen, or from the citizen perspective, but hopefully we are speeding up.
Yes, thank you so much. I'd like to ask all three of you if you agree. Christina just mentioned it's not always a technological problem. I heard from Romania it's kind of sometimes it's a question of technical infrastructure that has to be built. But how about the others? I think legal uncertainties within the public sector, for the people who are working within the public sector, they are really not used to think in data, in providing data or using data for public sector purposes, and legal uncertainties. And the other point I was talking about is lack of culture and skills. I think that's a point we have to discuss within the public sector. What do you think? Bert, would you like to start?
Yes, I think all of these other issues in the end can be overcome if people really understand what is the benefit, what is the progress they can get, and the ease of use, the ease of experience of a public sector and of a public service. And we saw some great examples, I think, this morning in the invited presentations, Flandern in the Finland examples. I mean, we're really striking about also in Germany about, okay, if people get motivated about the use case, then each of these issues can be sorted out. And I've had many discussions with legal advisors, and they say always, don't continue talking with me about the principles and the theory. Give me a concrete case and we will find a way to make it work, right? Not always the case. There might be a law that is really prohibiting something, but then go to the lawmakers, I would say. But in many cases, if it is legal interpretation or if it is contract law, contracts can be changed, right? So give them a very concrete problem, and then the problem can be addressed. And the cultural education aspects, we should not underestimate. Absolutely, they need to be done. But if the public or the target users are motivated for that service, there will be a means to explain and educate them on that service. So I'm not so afraid actually about these different inhibitors. If we get energy behind really beneficial use cases, then we see that these things can really be progressed and resolved. And again, of course, by using the best practices across all of these countries. And we've seen some great examples this morning. There is absolutely more. Reacting to Christina's point about the federal states, because we saw Flanders this morning in Belgium, and also I know examples in Spain and in Italy, large federated countries. I mean, I think we should try to change the conversation from, of course, we don't want to centralize everything, and everything does not need to be the same because regions differ for good reasons. But in the mechanisms and the tool sets we use, there is for sure much more harmonization to be done, and then allow regions to still implement some different rules. We're not saying that every region needs to use exactly the same service. They can implement different variations, but let them use more common tool sets such that they can advance faster on their digital transformation. That would be my recommendation for the federated states.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Very good. Marius, what are your ideas and thoughts about this?
Yeah, if we talk about infrastructure, let's say Romania have a very great infrastructure in communication. We have a very high speed to the internet. We have already implemented the RoNet, that calling. We have a network for communication that cover more than 89% of the country. And if we talk about the tools for the public administration, we will see we have proceed to very big steps, and all our personnel from the institution started to use it and to implement it, all the politics for this digital transformation. But it's like I said before, it's a little bit different. Romania, it's a very big country, like surface, okay, and we need time to put it all this together, and to make the interoperability platform. Will be also in the process of government cloud, and I think next year on this time we can talk about more than 60% of the public of the institution public institution will be foundable in the government cloud. That means it'll be very easy also for teaching, let's say, the people who don't have skills in this sector, and to help them very easy to use these tools.
Yeah, quite interesting.
Yeah.
So
please.
So you are looking forward to so you do have already the technical infrastructure.
Yes, we already start with government cloud. We have the laws. We started already with implementing these structures, this, let's say, huge structures, where all the public institution will be there to the end, and also we'll have the research field, the university field. And we'll have also the marketplace will be, I don't know, a joint venture between, I don't know, anyone who want to be involved, even if it's calling Amazon, Microsoft, or I don't know, any other providers. Everybody, we have our door is open for anyone who want to join in us in the private sector of this government cloud.
Yeah. Allow me one more question about
Please.
how about those people who are working within public administrations? Are they aware of the use of data? Is it common to share data within public administrations in Romania? Yes,
we have made it big steps in these last 2 years, because this COVID crisis have teaching us we need to share data. So the people have changed the views, and they understood you have only one option to share with others. if we talk about data, because you know, if the office is closed and you can touch the data, okay, physical, that envelope with data, so you must to share data, digital data. That means everybody understood the idea, and basically everybody right now want to starting to use this data. Is not only a political declaration. No, it's a reality, and everybody understood this is the future, because if you don't sharing data, you don't have other possibilities to work, and we can exchange information in real time if we are not agreed to work with data. So yeah, basically our public sector starting to field how to use this data.
Very interesting. Christina, would you like to share some ideas?
I apologize me. I must to leave because we have a governor conference, and our Prime Minister have asking from the messages to all to be present there. And thank you very much for invitation. I salute all the panel's member, and to the next time, see you.
Thank you for joining us, and have a good meeting now. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Yes, I see we are a bit out of time, but I would like to add 2 more questions to Bert and to Christina. We were already talking about solutions in your countries to overcome the challenges. I think you made that very clear. I would like to ask you if you could tell us about some main experiences or main ideas that others can learn from. What are the important points in Luxembourg and in Germany where others can look to and get ideas? Oh, this might be a good idea, and to copy or to develop. Do you have 1 or 2 points on this?
Well, maybe especially when we're talking about cultural change within the people that are working in the public administration, maybe just one example without knowing if it's maybe something that we have copied from other member states and that's already common there. So our federal government, and I know that the governments in the counties and the Länder do a lot of the same. We have established in the different ministries so-called data labs. So we are really starting to have the data scientists and data experts in the ministries itself, really to understand and to help with this cultural change and with data literacy for all the people, to support us in our daily work, what we can do with the data, because ministries and public authorities do have a lot, but there's simply a lack of what can we do with it, how can the data support us, how we need to work with the data, which data format should we think about or consolidate it. And I think such a unit, such a data lab within every ministry where you all simply can trust, because they're within your ministry, within your unit, will help a lot to have this grassroots cultural change that we need in the public sector. And that's something that I could really highly recommend if we haven't copied it from others. So I'm not sure about it.
Nevertheless, it's a very good idea.
Yeah, we agree with a similar model. So we also have our data experts in the originating departments, because you have the best knowledge about the processes, the data formats and so forth at the source, and also understanding of the use cases. So in Luxembourg, we also already have a community of data scientists. So you do need to bring these people together for cross-learning. And we are about to start now a new community with uniting the research data managers. So not only the scientists, but also the people focused on managing the data sets themselves and the data transactions, and unite these people in a cross-learning community. So that is for sure a best practice to proceed with, because you cannot centralize all this knowledge. You need to keep it decentral, but then you need to unite these people to share knowledge across them. And the other thing I would mention is cross-border projects, because we have a couple of engagements which go cross-border, and those have proven to be very interesting as well, because then you combine people with experience in a different legal system. And that also helps a lot.
Yeah, really good. Thank you so much. I could ask you a lot of more questions, but regarding the time, we are really running short. I'm so happy that you shared your ideas and insights in the public sector activities. So thank you very, very much. Maybe we can continue this discussion at another time and place. So I have to move forward. Thank you again. I have to move forward to our next speaker, and I would like to introduce you and to welcome Manuel Mateo Goyer from the European Commission. He is Deputy Head of Unit Cloud and Software and working at the DG for Communications, Networks, Content and Technology. As far as I know, he will give us some insights in the European Commission's vision and mission towards public sector data spaces, and there should be chances of funding and support by the Commission. And we are very excited to hear what measures the European Commission is taking to support the public sector data spaces. Please, Manuel, the floor is yours.
The floor is mine once you've confirmed that my microphone works okay.
Yeah, it is.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tina, and good afternoon now to everyone. I'll allow myself to be a bit subversive in the sense that I feel that all the bright ideas have already been said at least once this morning. So I think in the Commission we do, I don't know if everything that was said this morning, but the love of it, sometimes not always with the same name, but that's okay. That's united in our differences. That's what Europe is about. I think I've been listening carefully since the beginning, and the only thing really I want to do is complement a bit what has been said here and there by different people, and I'll then use that moment to distill indeed what the Commission actually does. So, of course, being in Brussels, taking a cloud and rain, working in cloud in Brussels, rain was by necessity the image I was meant to take. So there's plenty of acronyms here, but I think just to introduce myself, I've worked in the cloud unit, and we have those two objectives at the bottom, which is to deploy 10,000 edge nodes and to increase the business uptake of cloud to 75%. We're at 42% today, and we're at, let's put it in simple terms, we're at 0 edge nodes, although I know that there are experiments here and there. And we have 4 instruments, or 4 set of instruments, which are monitoring, because it takes us quite a bit of time to an effort to monitor well those 2 objectives of cloud uptake and edge deployment, but to do plenty of other monitoring, foreign direct investment, energy efficiency of data centers, etc. We do have regulation. I'll have a slide complementing what Hubert said earlier. Investment, of course, and then policy making. I think where the earlier speakers were very, I think it was Simon earlier, which showed how much and how well he places Flandern in the against the rest of Europe, and that's part of the monitoring we're doing. We've been doing this for the last 12, 15 years. The last version was the so-called DESI indicators, and we're now moving this year into the digital decade indicators, and some items will be released this week, but the real national figures will be released soon after the summer. And I think that's it's a new generation of metrics, of reporting, but it's, I think, most importantly, a new level of commitments in the sense that the metrics are now really agreed and co-created with the member states. And for example, when you see 10,000 edge nodes there, we've been working for the last 6-10 months with member states to define this. And now what is an edge node against what is a cloud, a traditional cloud. So I think my first message now this afternoon is that metrics are really important. I won't enter too much into the legal instruments because Hubert earlier gave a very nice account of the Data Governance Act and the Data Act. But what I wanted to show in this slide, and then you need more colleagues and more people to explain all this, is that those two instruments, which are probably the most recent, and the Data Act is, of course, in everyone's mind at the moment, because indeed today there's an important negotiation happening this afternoon. But the Digital Markets Act is now enacted and equally important. And I think a lot of interventions today were about open data, the free flow of data, and of course a lot of interventions. And now Christina was talking a lot about personal data, and the different speakers, I think, highlighted how important it is. And of course, that's always an interesting twist to deploying data spaces. There's two other things that we do that I want to highlight. The first one was a bit echoing what Francesco was calling for in his opening remarks, for a sort of data space, or a sort of a possibility to use each other's services, and a place where you can find all those cloud services. We are, and I apologize, this is the slide I quickly picked from a technical presentation, but we are currently, we've given a grant to a project called DOME to precisely set up such a European level marketplace. It's called DOME, like a circular dome. And the idea is to provide this at European level, but as well to federate national initiatives. I think Marius, a moment ago before leaving, was commenting on the Romanian initiative to do so. We're aware of many of those national and even regional initiatives, and even local in some places. So it's important that it works. And the way this has to work is echoes something else that Francesco was mentioning, is the different rules, and how to make sure that everything is respects EU legislation and EU regulation and EU codes of conduct and self-regulatory initiatives. So he was, I think, he was mentioning this in the context of I think Gaia-X Trust Services. I'm not sure I'm quoting the name correctly, but this echoes very much something that we're doing here, and that we hope to be releasing in the autumn, which is what we call the Cloud Rule Book. So it's a book that compiles the rules That's what it is. It's not a new layer of rules, but it's an easy, it intends to be an easy point of reference to for such regulations. And I think for probably for most of the people in the audience, this would be, I hope, hopefully a trivial content, in the sense that I take that the audience today are really professionals of cloud and how things work. But it's not the case, and we hear and we keep hearing complaints of mainly the ones who are on the client side, on the procurement side, who don't know how it works, what are the rules, how to refer to them, etc. And if I mention procurement, is that next to it, and there's no slide about it, the idea of moving forward with standardized procurement clauses in the context of the Data Act implementation is moving forward, and this would be, I think, a very important set of really practical elements that people, procurers around Europe, can put into their procurement technical specifications, and so that once they contractualize their needs with the third parties, that those contracts are harmonizing so far as possible. And then I think Francesco mentioned it today. We are working on simple, but as well in funding a lot of data spaces. This is actually a simplified version of the whole ecosystem and the whole thing, and it's already quite complicated. But maybe my first remark, and you see the different ecosystems in the greenish upper part, is that I think, I mean, today it's about public sector data spaces, but I think maybe the longer version of the webinar could be data spaces for public sector audience, because I think that a lot of most of data spaces are actually dual, and I think that was referred by all the speakers earlier, is that the private-public partnership connection, when it gets to data sharing, to data intermediation, like Hubert explained, etc., is fundamental. So you have a non-exhaustive list there of data spaces that the Commission is involved with. The public procurement one that Aitor was mentioning is not there, but simply because it's a non-exhaustive list. We're very much involved in working in that area too, and so looking at all those data spaces and echoing very much what other speakers speaking about when they were speaking about interoperability. I think Nicolas mentioned that very much, and Antti as well, is this idea of you know, that interoperability can only work if you use the same tools in the background. And I don't recall on whose the slides I saw the word of middleware, and this is a bit the idea of this simple box there at the bottom, is that providing a single set of middleware to power and to fuel those data spaces. So we're doing actually two things. We're funding those data spaces, and at the same time we're developing this single set of simple tools that we look forward for data spaces to use and reuse. And this is where I would share the slides, of course, so don't get mad on the on taking screenshots. But the idea, and I'm not going to enter here again into the technical details, is to first ensure interoperability in between different data spaces by having those similar tools deployed, and they don't need to be deployed in the same manner. There's 3 examples here on destination, and if you see that the simple agent is more like a gateway. You see that here in the context of smart cities and communities, the simple agent is more the interface that you have in between the data users, and they collaborate, but through their national, through a centralized national contact point. The health data spaces would be another example. And then here on the top right side, you have an example of an industrial data space, but in mobility, in energy would work as well like this, where the simple agent is much more distributed and used to everyone. So I've left here the technical things for people who are interested. I'm not going to get into the details, not the least because lack of time. But the slides are there, and they're all public, and they're complemented by many things that are online. Maybe a word, because I said that we're giving typically grants for the development of data spaces, but we are procuring simple. And there's really 3 things that we're procuring: is the open source solution, which is this set of common tools. It's I've heard from Nicolas the importance and the idea behind Master Portal, which I confess not to be aware. So this is what I marked as my follow-up homework for me, is to inquire there what has already been done, because our idea is not to reinvent the wheel, but to reuse good ideas that are indeed open source. So Simple Open is this core product. It's what I've shown in the earlier slides of the architecture. Then a Simple Labs, which is a demonstration environment for Simple Open, for people to be able to see how it works and to try it. And then Simple Life, where we will kind of support the deployment, actively support the deployment of Simple Open in some sectoral data spaces. And we've not picked them randomly. We've picked them because they are public sector data spaces. There's plenty of others where we don't intend to provide such services. And this is where the loop is closed with the public procurement data space that Aitor was presenting earlier. So within the short time frame, I think that was it on my hand. I hope it was hopeful for everyone, and my only regret is not to be able to pursue this around a coffee discussion, because I'm sure seeing how much we have in common, that it would have been a grateful and insightful side discussions with many of you. Good afternoon to everyone.
Thank you, Manuel. This was really great. I have a direct question. Please allow me one. The cloud rulebook you have mentioned, is this already on stage, or is it an idea? Can you provide a link or something that we can have a look at it?
So not yet. It's not yet available. We'll make it available in the autumn. I don't have yet a precise date to share with you. I think the idea has been in the books for a while. It's already mentioned back in the data strategy. So if you want, the placeholder is there since a while. We're working on it. Go and have a nice summer holiday, and it will be back at some point before Christmas.
Work in progress. Thank you so much. So now I will give back the floor to Alessandra, please.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Manuel. We are a little bit over the time, but I see there is one question on the operating model you presented, Manuel, and I see that Francesco, you would like to take the floor, so I would like to give you the floor.
Yeah, I made a mistake because I wanted to type the answer whilst Manuel was speaking, but it turned out to be like I wanted to answer live. But I think Manuel can. I think the question was from the Aruba colleague about the dome, and he was talking about the marketplace. So maybe Manuel can explain it better than me. But the dome is a public tender actually, and it was already, I think, awarded. And I'm pretty sure that engineering, simply because I've been working for them in the past, and I know the type of solution they have offered is working on it. So the dome is a project to implement a public marketplace of cloud services, likewise, I said at the beginning, and not only for the public sector. But I wanted to ask a question to Manuel, and sorry for taking stage, but Manuel, I've recently run into STEP, and I wanted to ask you whether you can explain me a little bit more about this strategic technology European platform, if I remember well the acronym. I think it's the right one.
So I'm not sure I heard I understood the question well.
So I recently ran into a new initiative. I don't think it's yet finalized. A new initiative from the European Commission, which is called STEP, Strategic Technology European Platform, which basically is a combination of multiple funding resources to converge into all the needs for a next generation, let me say, digital infrastructure in Europe. So converging resources for what concerns infrastructure, data in all different sectors. And also it is mentioning about the need for a sovereign label. So in other words, all the projects that will achieve this will be qualified with this sovereign label, will have access to this special tool, which is called STEP, as a strategic technology European platform. But I don't know much about it, and
so I guess that will be a second item on my homework list, because the
you don't know it either.
Concept doesn't ring a bell, but I'll complement. Maybe yes, but back to the dome. It's not a procurement, it's a grant. The grant is up and running since beginning of the year. I just provided the link to replying to Enrico's answer. Yes, it's up and running and it's working. And indeed, it's engineering is one of the consortium members there. But you will see it's a huge consortium, and I'm sure quite a lot of the names will ring a bell to many of you.
Thank you, Manuel. There is also another question on when the results of the first phase of simple tender will be public.
No answer to that. We're busy doing the evaluation, but I know that's a frequent question, but I'm bound to secrecy on those public procurement questions. I'm sorry, I cannot share more.
We completely understand, and we look forward to learning more, as you said, after the summer break, or even earlier, Okay, I think that we are 10 minutes over time. So if there are no other questions coming up, I would like to thank you all for the participation, especially thank all the speakers, the panelists, and of course, thank Tina for the great collaboration to organize this event. And we hope to see you soon to our next events, among which, as you can see on the screen, Gaia-X Summit that will take place on the 9th and 10th of November in Spain, in Alicante. We hope to see you all there. More information will soon be available on our website. So thank you again, and have a great day.